Yo, what is up guys? It is your boy Zether back at it again with a brand new video. This being what if Deku had Lady Nagants Quirk part 3. Yes boys, I know. I've been gone for quite a while and I don't really want to jabber on with this intro, so we're going to do a recap real quick. And then, we're going to do that thing we always do before we start the video. Anyways, on the last part, we had pretty much gone over how Deku had ended up finishing off that fight against Bakugo in the beginning that I last left off in part 1, and we pretty much had them both go to UA as they did their quirk exams, and they basically just got overall amazing scores. Bakugo and Deku were like best friends in the series, and they're doing pretty well if I do say so myself. That being said, at the end of everything, Deku and Momo got a little some together, and for those of you who forgot, Deku kind of looks like Eren from Attack on Titan type build. That's like his hairstyle, and he has that build as well. He's just like a more attractive, less depressed looking version of him. Like, he looks vibrant, I guess you could say. That being said though, guys, they went on a date and they ended off with some good old-fashioned study. And I know, guys, this intro's been long enough. So with that being said, we're just gonna go ahead and say it with me, guys. Get started. Okay, so where we're essentially going to start our story off is the day that they're all being told to get on the bus. Everybody would pretty much just be getting all set up, and the group would go as follow. Bakugo, Deku, Uraraka, and Momo would basically just be in the back of the class all chilling together with people like Suyu and them basically in the front talking about, who do you think is the strongest in the class? With, everybody being like, oh, that definitely has to go to either Bakugo or Deku. Did you see how powerful they were in the quirk exams? And in the heroes versus villains, they're definitely top tier students. As, Bakugo would say, yep. And Deku would kind of pay no mind to that. He'd kind of be like, yeah, whatever you guys say. As he'd continue talking to Momo, and Momo would say, it's true. I mean, you do have the greatest quirk in the class. With Bakugo saying, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to say anything. As Deku would say, oh, really? And she'd say, yeah. As they'd get close, and a little schmoochy would happen a little bit. As they would arrive to their destination, of which is the USJ. And Aizawa would pretty much tell them all to get off of the bus, telling them that it's time for them to get off now. As he would proceed to basically look towards Deku and tell him that he needs to keep his hands to himself. As Deku would begin to basically chuckle a little bit with Aizawa saying, I'm serious. And they would then begin to basically walk inside, as Deku would get a strange feeling. As soon as he walks inside, all of his senses are telling him that they need to leave now. As this is when Aizawa would basically begin to walk a little bit, a purple mist would arrive out of nowhere as Deku would instinctually create a cannon out of his hand, a laser beam, and he would blast it straight through Kurogiri's metal portion as he would literally fall on the ground, and he would have accidentally killed Kurogiri off of pure instinct. As Kurogiri's whole portal thing would basically drop down to the ground, and Deku would basically tell them all to rush towards the door. As Aizawa says, wait, as Deku would say, we have to there's villains down there. He was not the only one. As Aizawa would then tell the kids to get out of there. As they would all rush out of the gate. And this is when they would all basically begin to go outside. As Aizawa would say, we need to call for backup. As this is when essentially we would then have, Shigaraki being like, no, this is not supposed to happen. As he would then begin to basically say, Nomu, kill Aizawa. As this is when Deku would basically see the Nomu rushing at Aizawa's direction. As Deku would push Aizawa out of the way, and he would basically shoot a bunch of bullets at the Nomu's legs. These would actually be tranquilizer darts, and the Nomu would start slowing down a bit. As Deku would then tell Aizawa that if they want to defeat this thing, they have to do it together. As Aizawa would say, right. And he would proceed to turn off the Nomu's regeneration and shock absorption. As Deku would create another laser cannon with his arms, he would blast it straight through the Nomu's stomach. And he would then create a giant scythe as he cuts off the Nomu's head, causing the Nomu's head to basically fall down on the ground. With Deku essentially saying, is that it? With Shigaraki saying, no, this can't be happening. As Deku would basically point his gun straight at Shigaraki with Aizawa saying, hey, you've already killed enough. I suggest you let me handle it. With Deku saying that thing wasn't alive in the first place. He would then point his weapon straight towards Shigaraki, and he would shoot him at a point which would actually knock him out instead of killing him. With Aizawa basically telling Deku that he just needs to call for backup, and the heroes will pretty much take care of the cleanup. With Aizawa and 13 jumping down there to basically hold off any villains that would try to run off. As this when the rest of the heroes would arrive and the cleanup would go by relatively simple. The USJ arc is really not that long, seeing as we have a Deku whose senses are heightened and the situation would have actually called for different measures. This would then lead us into the 1 week training break, 1 week training break, which would essentially consist of Deku, Uraraka, Bakugo, and Momo essentially all pretty much just hanging out together and training their quirks during the 1 week. Momo's training would essentially consist of her speeding up the time that it takes her to create things, as well as hand-to-hand combat with a bow staff and shield. Uraraka's would consist of basically training her gravity quirk to make it so that she can use it with more finesse and not exactly have to throw up every 5 seconds after she uses it. This would then lead them into both actually having a lot greater uses of their quirks, and Bakugo and Deku would have basically been overlooking their training, as well as going on a couple of double dates, and Deku and Bakugo would have done a couple of sparring sessions with, Deku and Bakugo being a little even, seeing as Deku didn't want to embarrass Bakugo too bad in front of his lady. So he would let Bakugo win every now and then, as he would make them both think that they're pretty much even, but they're not. This would pretty much lead us into what is essentially going to be them returning back to class. As soon as they do, they would basically just be having a normal day of school up until the final class of the day, in which a bunch of other UA students would basically be standing outside, as they would basically be saying, "Look, that's class 1A, the ones that fought against the villains. I hear that Izuku Midoriya kid actually ended up taking care of the boss." As they would begin to mutter in the background, and some kid with blonde hair would come in out of nowhere, this being Monoma, who says, "Ha! Class 1A, what a joke. I can't believe that teacher let the villains break in." As Aizawa would actually turn the corner, and Monoma would then be right about to say something to Aizawa, as Kendo would smack Monoma across the head, telling Aizawa that he's sorry for his little friend here. As Aizawa would say it's whatever, and he would go back inside to sleep. As this is when Deku would proceed to basically go outside and tell them off they can please get out of their way, seeing as they just want to get home. And the other classes would immediately oblige as soon as Deku said that. With that meaning, Bakugo would never even have to say anything like extras to the other classes. So in terms of the UA Sports Festival, they'd be a much more favorable class to win, as none of the other classes would exactly be gutting for them, and Shinso would have no real reason to, not really do too much, I guess you could say. Okay, that being said, we would then basically we would then essentially be talking about what's it called? I kind of jumbled my mind a little bit. Oh yeah, sorry. We're basically gonna be skipping on over to the day of the UA Sports Festival, to which a couple of things are definitely going to be happening. Okay, number one. As soon as they arrive, Deku would actually be told that he actually has to be the one to give the speech, seeing as he was actually the one who got the highest score and it wasn't Bakugo this time. This would lead into Deku essentially going up to the podium and giving a great speech, which would actually inspire people to actually try their best, with Bakugo not exactly making the classes gut for them as either, and this would then lead into Midnight telling them all that they have to get ready for the quirk for the race. As all of them would basically go to the changing rooms and put on their outfits, as Deku and Momo would sneak off to have a little study session. If you get what I'm saying. And this is when they would basically all go outside. As Deku would tell Momo good luck, they would immediately start the race, with Todoroki using his ice quirk, but Momo would have been fast on her feet. She would have created her staff and would have basically jumped up onto the air, using it as a catapult to dodge the ice attacks. She would then create some ice skates, and she'd basically plop on the ground, and she wasn't able to move for a while, but then she finally started skating over the ice. As everybody else would do their normal maneuvers, Uraraka would get some assistance from Bakugo, and Deku would ask Momo if she needs some help, which Momo says that she doesn't, and this is when Deku would decide that he's gonna bust something out that he didn't think he was gonna have to for another couple of, another couple of rounds, but Deku would decide that it's now or never. He might as well get first place as he already can. As Deku would then use his airwalk quirk, and he would begin to basically straight up sprint to the other side of the finish line, dodging each and every single one of the obstacle courses, and Deku would essentially win. He would get the first place headband, and as soon as that happens, everybody would be gutting for Deku's team, but Deku would give them a stare right back, which would actually force a lot of them to actually get a little scared of Deku, and a lot of the teams would actually decide, yeah, let's not go for that kid, seeing as he actually looks like he could actually do some damage. As in terms of what Deku's team is going to be, his team would essentially be looking like Uraraka, Momo, Bakugo, and himself. Their whole squad would basically have Deku being on the bottom, with Bakugo being on the top, seeing as he can provide some battle combat with his explosions, and Deku would decide that his strategy is going to be pretty easy. He would tell Uraraka to make each and every single one of them weightless for 5 minutes, and she would say that she's going to be able to do that, but on the last couple seconds, they might fall. As this is when Deku would say that it's okay and that they don't need that much time, that he can also support them up in the air with nothing but his raw physical strength for the last minute, seeing as Uraraka can only have her quirk active for 4 minutes at a time. This would then lead into everybody getting on top of Deku, with him being at the bottom, Momo basically holding up Bakugo, and Uraraka as well, as she would make everybody weightless, and Deku would then proceed to airwalk up to the air. As the entire battle would start, the first person to try to go up to them would definitely be Todoroki. He would have decided that he's going to get a little bit of revenge to Bakugo after what he had done to him on the last time, as he would try it, but Deku would just go way higher than Todoroki can reach at a safe distance, and Bakugo would shoot a couple of AP shots at the ice, warning Todoroki that if he gets closer, he'll break the ice underneath him and he'll send Todoroki flying 60 feet down, as Todoroki would have ended up getting the hint, and it would definitely help out with what they're essentially going to be doing. This would then proceed to lead into the the next portion, which is essentially going to be the battles. Every single person on Deku's team, as well as Todoroki's team, and a couple random people would have ended up passing, leading into the battles. Everybody would go into the waiting rooms, and seeing as they're all pretty much friends, the only one who would be declaring war would be Todoroki, and everybody else would pretty much just be chill with each other. As the first battle would be announced, that it's actually going to be Deku versus Todoroki this time, instead of Shinso. And Bakugo is actually going to be the one who has to fight Shinso, which he doesn't have one for all, by the way, and Shinso definitely will make him talk. So Bakugo, say bye-bye, Bakugo. Bye-bye, Bakugo. Yeah, he ends up losing. Deku would get into the ring with Shinso, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, I did that because, all jokes aside, if Deku were to fight against Shinso, he would definitely lose, just due to Shinso's sheer little quirk that he has, mind erasing. And after Bakugo's battle, Bakugo would have definitely been able to tell Deku what happened after that. But we're now going to cover Todoroki. As soon as the battle with Todoroki would start, Deku would decide that it's going to be the best course of action to try to get his distance from Todoroki, seeing as he's most likely going to use a giant ice attack to try to defeat him first try. As Deku would use his airwalk quirk to get as far from Todoroki as he can, Todoroki would then try to shoot icicles at him, but they wouldn't even be able to reach that distance. As Deku would create a small submachine gun, and he would start blasting a couple of pellets at Todoroki at his feet, arms, and body area, which would basically weaken Todoroki slowly but surely. He would then shoot a poison dart at Todoroki, which would weaken him severely, and would actually cause Todoroki to pretty much fall onto one knee. As after that point, Deku would create a little bit of a... Deku would pretty much just use his airwalk quirk to jump down over there, and he would literally backhand with his leg the ever living, out of Bakugo. You guys know the word. And Bakugo would essentially get knocked out. After this would pretty much lead us into the next battle, which is essentially going to be Deku versus Sato. No. Deku versus Tape Boy. Yeah, Tape Boy. And do I even have to cover this battle, boys? This would be a one-sided stomp. What is Tape Boy gonna do? Yeah, he would wrap him up in the tape, but as soon as he does that, Deku would just create a scythe with his arm, ripping it off, and he would blitz this man as he would just kick him straight out of the arena, face first into the grass. As Bakugo, as I said, he would warn Deku about what Shinso's power is and how he actually ended up getting brainwashed by his ability. Deku would definitely take note of Shinso's abilities, and this would pretty much lead us into the finals, which would actually be Deku versus Shinso. Although Deku knew the abilities of Shinso, Bakugo never actually ended up telling anybody else, seeing as they didn't end up fighting Shinso. Uraraka and Momo would have actually been taken out by someone else, and Shinso would have taken out their opponents. That being said, this would lead into Deku and Shinso's battle, which I would low-key elongate this and make it seem like it's a little more, like there's actually more ways that Shinso can win, or, try to make this part a little longer. But in all reality, this is going to literally be one-sided as it can possibly get. See, as soon as the battle starts, Shinso would try to get Deku to talk, but seeing as Deku is more disciplined in this version, he would know when it's time to be quiet and simply just do what he has to do. This would lead him to basically rush Shinso and take him out, seeing as Shinso never focused on his body. So Shinso would have definitely been taken out swiftly, and this would lead into Deku being the winner and the victor of the UA Sports Festival, which would now lead us into the ending and the medals. Bakugo wouldn't even get anywhere near first place, and it would be announced that the winners are actually going to be Deku, Tokiyami, and Shinso, as they were the big three of the entire festival. This would then lead us into what is essentially going to be them going back to school and picking their internships as well as their hero names. After the sports festival, though, there was somebody who was very interested in Deku's quirk. This guy being Snipe. And he would have definitely ended up sending Deku a little request of him wanting him to have a little word with him. So he would definitely send the request, and as soon as Deku sees that, he would of course accept it immediately, seeing as he's really the only person who he could actually learn anything from, which would actually lead into him going to Snipe's agency. And he would actually ask for his hero name. He would choose the name, the sniper hero, Eren. Yeah, the sniper hero Eren. Yeah, that's his name. Seeing as he looks like Eren Yeager, I might as well give him the name Eren. He's not gonna have no Attack on Titan abilities, but I respect the way Eren looks. The man is low-key zaddy, I ain't gonna lie. I don't really like Attack on Titan like that, but that man look good. No homo! I have socks. Alright? I promise I'm wearing socks. That being said, though, guys, this would then pretty much lead us into Deku getting all his stuff together and saying goodbye to Momo, as she would end up going to Fat Gum's agency, and Uraraka would end up going over with, the martial arts hero Gunhead, as that would pretty much remain the same. Not gonna lie, guys, I had to stop the recording a little bit. If you heard background noise, I do apologize, but handle that. Anyways, that being said, this would basically lead Deku to pretty much gathering his stuff together and going to Snipe's agency. He would take the train there, and it would be a pretty boring ride, seeing as nobody's actually going to be tagging along with him. This would actually cause a couple of different chain events to happen. Bakugo would go to his usual Best Genius, but Best Genius would have no real reason to pretty much teach Bakugo the things that he had done in the original, which would lead into much different events happening in this version. This basically means Ida, unfortunately, is going to be dying to the hero killer. And in terms of Hosu City, Endeavor and, other pro heroes would have a much harder time handling it, with actually a couple of casualties due to the Nomus. But Endeavor, at the end of the day, would actually be more than enough to handle it, as well as Todoroki, who still... Actually, no, Todoroki wouldn't go. Deku would have never told him that it's his quirk, not his, and that Todoroki would still be a whiny little, BRAT. I don't even know if I could say that word, honestly. YouTube monetization, stuff like that, it really hurts. But anyways, that being said, this would lead us into what is pretty much going to be Deku's Snipe's agency. As soon as he arrives, Snipe would basically ask him to sit down. And as soon as he does, Snipe would tell everybody in the room to get out, as Snipe would pretty much proceed to basically ask Deku a couple of questions. Deku would sit down and Snipe would say, "Let me ask you something, kid. Notice that quirk of yours is very similar to somebody that I used to know. Let me ask you something, kid. Who are your parents?" As Deku would say, "My parents?" As Snipe would say, "Did I stutter?" And Deku would then proceed to say, "Well, my mother is Izuku Midoriya. Minko Midoriya, with my father's name being Hisashi Midoriya." And Snipe would then say, "Oh, so you're not related to her." As Deku would say, "Related To who exactly? As he would say, well, kid, truth be told, the real reason why I called you down here is because I'm interested. I'm interested in your ability that you have, which can create weapons out of your limbs. It's something that's definitely very useful, and it's something that I have a lot of interest in, seeing as I know a previous hero who actually had even better quirk than mine. She would definitely be the number one sniper hero in the world right now if it wasn't for me. As Deku would say, that's so. I guess this actually does make you the second hero. As soon as I graduate, I'm taking that spot. As Snipe would say, funny kid. As Deku would basically create a sniper out of his hand and he would aim it right at Snipe, saying, think I'm kidding? As he would put his boots on top of the table and he would basically tell Snipe, now, why are you treating me the way you are right now? Speak. As Snipe would say, gutsy, aren't you, kid? As Deku would proceed to say, a little bit. As Snipe would then proceed to look towards him and say, well, she was a previous hero who turned bad and ended up going against what her orders would, which led her to actually being taken to the prison of Tartarus. And I needed to make sure that you weren't working with her or affiliated with her in any single way. As Deku would say, oh. And he would take away the weapon as he would say, understandable. It all makes sense. As Snipe would say, yeah, a little bit. And Deku would then say, well, are you going to have a prejudice towards me just because my quirk's similar? Or are you going to be able to actually train me? Because if not, I can just go train myself if you'd like. And Snipe would then say, tell you what, kid. I'll train you if you can beat me at a sniping contest. Any weapon you want, anywhere, any place. As Deku would say, you're letting me choose? And Snipe would say, of course. As Deku would say, I don't really care. You can choose, honestly. I don't have the time to pick. As Snipe would look towards Deku and say, interesting. He would choose his favorite location, which was actually the hardest shot that he can actually score. It would be an angled shot. So the way that it works is that the bullet literally hits a corner and it would basically ricochet multiple times to go straight through a target. And it was one of Snipe's hardest shots to make. He would perform the shot after 3 tries, and Deku would then say, that's a little interesting. So do I get 3 tries as well? As Snipe would say, well, if you're the best, you only deserve 1, right? As Deku would say, that's all I need. As he would basically walk up there and he would then change his weapon into something that's perfectly made for this. He would change the bullet to be a literal pellet so that it can ricochet off of things quicker, and he would then turn it at an angle as he would blast it, and the bullet's trajectory would change mid-air, so it wouldn't even need to ricochet off of anything. It would bounce 1, 2, 3 just to prove a point, and it would literally bounce in every single direction as Deku would just be smiling, and he would say, alright, I think it's time to win already. As the bullet was off of its trajectory completely, as Deku would then move his fingers a little bit and the bullet would go straight through the hole. As Snipe would be dumbfounded and he would then decide that I guess he is going to train him. As he would then begin to basically start teaching Deku a couple techniques that he knows for better aiming. And he would then basically teach Deku a little bit more in terms of hand-to-hand combat. But there's not much he could teach him. What he actually ended up teaching Deku is pretty much how to be a pro hero and how to run an agency, seeing as Deku's already stronger than the pro hero Snipe by a long shot. Not even by a little bit, guys. I'm telling you, this is by an insane amount. This would pretty much lead us to go into the finals, which is actually going to have a lot of different events actually occurring. This is very different than what you guys ended up actually getting in the original. They would basically go back to class with everybody pretty much finding out about Ida's death, and they would all pretty much have to attend Ida's funeral, as they would all be pretty down about what had happened, and they would all basically just be discussing, you know, what actually ended up going down in this entire time, seeing as it's not easy. They ended up holding a funeral, and after about a week of leaving the kids to mourn and not really doing too much, All Might would decide that it's time to raise their spirits. So everybody would be a little sad. Maybe they didn't know him like that, but he was their class rep, and even though he was kind of annoying, it sucks to see somebody like him go. As they would end up holding the hero race, the rescue race, and I'm not going to cover this. I hate this. It's literally the most boring thing in the world. Deku wins, Bakugo wins, Momo wins, whoever else you guys want to win wins. All right, that's pretty much what happens. Now, skipping over to the finals. Finals would pretty much be announced, and the team, they wouldn't be told that yet. But in terms of training for this thing, Deku isn't worried in the slightest. Momo isn't either, but she ended up having to teach a couple of kids how to use, their time wisely and teaching them how to study, which would have actually ended up leading into her being extremely happy. This would lead to Deku pretty much helping her with tutoring the kids in their class, and after each tutor lesson, they would have a little bit of fun together, if you get what I'm putting down. Anyways, that being said, they would do a little bit of studying, the usual, nothing too crazy, and this would then lead us into going to the actual day. Deku would take the exam with Bakugo, Deku, and all of the people who pretty much passed that portion ending up passing, and this would then lead them into being told who they're going to be fighting up against. The teams would go as follow: Deku and Bakugo versus All Might, and you could not have chosen a worse matchup. As soon as that was announced, Deku and Bakugo would smile towards each other as they would say that All Might or not, symbol or piece or not, they are going to absolutely destroy him. With All Might getting shivers down his spine, seeing as they didn't sound like they were joking whatsoever. And as soon as the battle starts, Deku would grab Bakugo's hands as he would throw him up into the air, with Bakugo pretty much staying above air level. And he would then basically ask Deku what the plan is, as Deku would basically just be walking up on literal air, as he would tell Bakugo that he wants him to distract him and he's going to hit his weak spot. As Bakugo would say, "Weak spot? As Deku would say, "Just trust me. I can tell All Might's been going down in terms of his stamina and power as of the latest years. I know what I'm talking about, Bakugo. Simply distract him and shoot a bunch of AP shots to get him off his guard. I'm going to be as high as I possibly can, out of All Might's range of sight, and I want you to distract him. Keep him focused on you for a while." As Bakugo would definitely do that, he would rush towards All Might saying, "Hey, All Might!" As he would rush towards him and shoot a couple of AP shots and explosions. Smoke would engulf the area as Deku would have just enough time to get out of All Might's sight. All Might would then lose track of where Deku was, and he would then have Bakugo, who pretty much is just continuing to wail on All Might. This would lead to All Might basically grabbing Bakugo by the face and smashing him down as he would punch him straight through a building wall. Bakugo would get back up severely injured as he would throw explosions straight at All Might and unleash a full-powered gauntlet onto him. As he was nervous, so the sweat was definitely racking up. This is when Bakugo would bust out of the window and All Might and Bakugo would get straight out of the smoke, as Deku would say that this is perfect, as he didn't even need them to get out, but All Might is too focused on Bakugo to notice. As Deku would shoot a bullet which would pretty much be filled with, it would be a non-lethal bullet, but it would basically hit him straight in his spot. As Bakugo would, not Bakugo, but All Might would start to weaken down and basically start getting, where he starts wearing down. As Bakugo and Deku would both basically unleash an amazing amount of taijutsu skills or simple just hand-to-hand combat abilities onto All Might, with Deku basically using a scythe with his arm to basically cut little slashes in All Might, weakening him down just enough to get All Might down on his knees, with Bakugo and Deku saying "say goodnight," as Deku would shoot a bullet straight at All Might's skull, knocking him out, and Bakugo would shoot a full-powered explosion in All Might's face. As after the exam, they would basically have Recovery Girl heal up All Might, and Deku and Bakugo would basically, after the whole class ends, they would tell All Might if he's willing to talk to them after class later, as they have something very important they'd like to discuss with him. With All Might saying, "Sure, young boys, I think you guys more than deserve that after the beating you guys gave me earlier. I'll see you guys then." As All Might and Deku and Bakugo would go off in their own separate paths. This is when it would then basically lead us into Deku and Bakugo basically just fighting against each other a little bit, doing a little bit of scrapping, sparring, I guess you could say, a little 5 minutes. Nothing too serious whatsoever. This would pretty much lead us into the end of the day, as everybody else would finish their finals, and Momo would ask Deku if he wants to go get some after class, to which Deku says that not right now, he actually has something to do, but maybe later, which Momo would say, "Sure, call me," and Deku would then proceed to go over to, our boy All Might's location. As they would go to the room, All Might would ask them what they need to talk about, with Deku looking towards All Might and saying, "Look, All Might, we're just here to talk real quick. I want to ask you some questions. You know that weak spot of yours? As Alma would say, what are you talking about, young Midoriya? And Deku would say, don't play a fool with me. I know exactly about you stagnating and getting weaker each and every year, as well as your hero time decreasing gradually over these last couple of years. All Might would then get a little shiver down his spine as Deku would say, don't worry, it's not like I'm going to sit here and snitch on you or hold you to some blackmail or something like that. I just want to ask, how did it happen? As All Might would then begin to basically tell them, it all started when, and flash forward because I don't want to cover that honestly. This is when would basically have Bakugo and Deku realizing what had happened, and All Might would have told them that he actually already found a successor. Which would actually kind of upset Bakugo, not gonna lie, seeing as he low-key wanted to be that successor. If he's being honest with himself, he feels as if he kind of deserves that little upgrade to his quirk. So Bakugo would be a little upset. Not, nothing too crazy since, he doesn't feel entitled, but he just, he thinks that he would have been a better successor. It's pretty much how he's feeling at this current moment. This is when we would essentially have Deku pretty much telling All Might that he understands everything and that he's going to be keeping his secret for him. And that he should probably come out public with this sometime soon, because if not, it's definitely going to come back and bite him on the, the ASS soon. As All Might would say, yeah, I'll take that into consideration, young Midoriya. As Deku and Bakugo would leave from that area, they would then proceed to basically talk to each other about what had happened. As they would both basically just be getting ready for the forest training arc, and Deku would get his, done to him by Momo. As this would then pretty much lead them into essentially going over to the forest, as they would pretty much be doing their forest training. As everybody would be on the bus, and the usual stuff would of course happen with the usual. I hate how I'm saying the usual so much, but it literally is the usual technically, since it's pretty much what always happens. So yeah, this right here, this right here. Oh, good boy, a little tired. But anyways, what's it called? This would pretty much lead us into them all being on the bus and being thrown off, as they would all pretty much clear the course, and they would arrive about 40 minutes earlier, seeing as we have a much more powerful Bakugo and Deku in this version. So they would have definitely chipped off some time off of the old score that they got. Yeah, 40 minutes sounds like a reasonable amount if you take into consideration the amount of time it takes to walk there and them waiting for their classmates. Yeah, it definitely took about 40 minutes. Their classmates would be exhausted, and Deku and Bakugo would be basically stretching after that, seeing as they think that was a pretty great workout. Aizawa would say that took them a little longer than a little less time than they expected. As Deku would say, yeah, it was a piece of cake. It took most of the time because we had to wait for these slow pokes. With the class basically being like, hey, and Deku just saying, I'm just saying it like it is. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but it's kind of what happened. As everybody in the class would start feeling a little bad, but Deku would just say that it's no problem at all, that they're gonna get their training into this week, as that's pretty much what happens. Koda wouldn't even be approached by Deku, so Deku wouldn't even get that unlucky nut punch that he did in canon. You hate to see that not happen to Deku. You hate to see it. Anyways, that being said, this will then lead us into more of the forest training arc, which is actually surprisingly not too much content to cover. They would do more training together with the entire class, basically just going through a full day and night of doing some great quality training together. And at the nighttime of the very next day, when they were basically eating curry, Deku would definitely go over to try to find that Koda kid, seeing as he definitely looks down bad, as he would have definitely ended up saving him just like he did in the original from the fall after he looked towards the girl, and Mineta tried to climb up there, except Mineta didn't even have to get hit by him, because as soon as Mineta tried it, Deku just blasted him with a bullet, knocking him down from there. And, this would lead into Koda basically looking towards the girl saying, don't worry, nobody's going to be He would pass out and have a nosebleed. Sorry about that noise. But, as, per usual in anime. This is when Deku would basically be scouring through the woods with the curry in his hands, as it would look for Koda, and he would actually ask him what he's doing over here. As Koda would say, he'd basically just be crying, and Deku would just say, "What's wrong?" As Deku would say, "Nothing's wrong. Just get out of here." As Deku would say, "Okay, kid, I guess I'll just leave this bowl of curry here." As this is when, Koda would basically say, "All you heroes are all the same, but one day you're all gonna die, and there's not gonna be no do-overs." As Deku would hear that and basically just stand there and hear what Koda's going through for the next couple seconds, as out of nowhere a figure would come emerging from the darkness. As this would of course be Muscular. Muscular would come in out of nowhere and do his usual thing. His usual being pretty much what you guys would expect. He would pretty much proceed to, let me get a stretch real quick before I can good. To take the cloak off and say, "Hey kid, do you know where some Katsuki Bakugo's at?" As Koda would say, It's you. You're the guy who." As Deku would come in out of nowhere saying, "Hey, get away from the kid." As Muscular would say, "Guess I'm gonna get to kill two, BRATS tonight." As Koda would just be totally terrified. He'd be shaking and say, You're the guy who killed my parents." As Deku would look up towards Muscular, and this is when he would get a rage in his eyes. As this COVID. As this, no, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. I don't actually have COVID. Chill. But this is where I am going to be leaving this part off, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this part, seeing as it was a lot of fun to record, and you guys can definitely expect the finale to Lady Nagant the very next day. I'm going to be covering the rest of the Forest training arc, the Camino arc incident, the little provisional hero license training, the overhaul arc, and that will pretty much wrap up Lady Nagant. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's part. Make sure to go down below and leave a like. There is no like goal, but I do appreciate a like every now and then. And make sure to report your attendance down below in the comments below, as I am going to be taking it. That being said though, guys, you guys all know the drill. I love you guys. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.